In the shattered hills of a forgotten war, where the air thrummed with the growl of artillery and the earth trembled under boots, a wild horse named Storm turned a soldier's darkest hour into a tale so wild it still echoes through the ranks. This isn't just a story of hooves on dirt. It's the unbelievable true saga of how one fearless beast charged into chaos, defied death, and pulled off a rescue that no one saw coming. Strap in, because Storm's Warzone run is a heart-pounding ride that'll leave you stunned at what a horse can do when the stakes are life itself. The year was 1943, deep in a conflict that scarred the countryside of Eastern Europe. Private Lucas Varga, a wiry Hungarian recruit barely 20, was pinned behind a crumbling wall, his squad scattered by a barrage that tore through their line. Bullets zipped like hornets, and smoke choked the sky, thick with the stink of gunpowder and fear. Lucas was alone, his rifle jammed, his leg gashed by shrapnel, a sitting duck as enemy shouts grew closer. He'd scribbled a goodbye note on a scrap of bandage, hands shaking, figuring this was it. The war had already taken his brother. Now it was his turn. "No one's coming," he whispered, eyes darting for a miracle that wasn't there. That's when he heard it, a sound cutting through the din, sharp and alive, hooves pounding earth. Lucas peeked over the rubble, squinting through the haze, and saw her, Storm, a coal-black mare with a mane like spilled ink, galloping straight into the fray. She was no army beast, no tamed mount with a rider. She was wild, a stray from the plains raised by tanks, her ribs stark against her hide, her eyes blazing with something fierce. Shells burst around her, dirt exploding in plumes, but she didn't flinch, just barreled forward, a shadow streaking through hell. Lucas froze, half thinking she'd bolt past, half praying she wouldn't. But Storm veered sharp, skidding to a halt beside his wall, her breath snorting steam in the cold. She pawed the ground, tossing her head as if urging him up. "You crazy?" he croaked, but the shouts were closing in, boots crunching, voices barking orders. No time to think. Gritting his teeth, Lucas hauled himself onto her back, clutching her mane as pain seared his leg. She didn't buck, didn't shy, just launched into a run, hooves hammering like thunder against the churned mud. The war zone blurred, a nightmare of smoke and screams. Bullets whined past, one grazing Storm's flank, but she powered on, weaving through craters and wire like she knew the way. Lucas clung tight, his world shrinking to her heat, her muscle, her wild will. They crossed a ridge, the gunfire fading, and stumbled into a ditch where a medic's outpost flickered with lantern light. He slid off, shouting for help, and medics rushed out, gaping at the blood-streaked mare who delivered him. "She saved me," Lucas gasped, collapsing as they patched his leg. Storm stood there, panting, her eyes locked on him, then turned and vanished into the dusk, a ghost swallowed by the war. But here's the twist that hits like a shell. Storm didn't just save Lucas. Days later, a patrol found a downed plane in the valley, a resistance pilot trapped in the wreck, alive but fading. Beside him, hoof prints, deep and fresh, leading straight to the outpost. The pilot swore a black horse had circled the crash, whinnying until scouts heard and followed her trail. Lucas, recovering in a cot, overheard and knew. Storm had run again, pulling another soul from the jaws of death. She was no ordinary stray. She was a force, a war zone angel with hooves, picking who'd live when the odds said no one should. Lucas survived the war, carried that note as a talisman, and told Storm's story to anyone who'd listen. Gray-haired now, he'd smile and say, "She chose me and him." The pilot lived too, naming his daughter Mara, Hungarian for bitter, but also mare. Storm was never seen again, lost to the wild or the war, but her legend gallops on, a horse who ran into hell and brought back miracles no one can explain.